Is this such a boring video? It's like, do people care about pancakes?
Absolutely.
Hey everyone, I'm Claire. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today on Dessert Person, I am showing you a recipe for sourdough pancakes, and I'm gonna also walk through what to do with sourdough starter, how to maintain it, how to feed it, and then how to use the discard. And I'm using it one of my favorite ways, which is to make sourdough pancakes. It has some cornmeal, some whole wheat flour, and I'm gonna show you my secret to making ultra light and fluffy pancakes. So I have here milk, all-purpose flour, baking soda, some melted butter, a little bit of sugar, 2 large eggs, baking powder, a little whole wheat flour, cornmeal, and actually I've been hydrating this cornmeal in a little bit of milk because it's very coarse. And then of course my sourdough starter. No special equipment, everything is done super fast in a bowl. I have a whisk, 2 mixing bowls. I have a non-stick pan. This happens to be a crepe pan because I just like it, but you can use any non-stick pan, and or if you have like a well-seasoned cast iron or a carbon steel pan, that's great too. I like a fish spatula for flipping pancakes, but use whatever is comfortable. A starter is a mixture of flour and water, and that can be in different proportions. I use basically 1-to-1 flour and water, and that mixture has been inoculated with yeast and bacteria that are naturally found in the air, on plants, everywhere, and has formed like a stable colony in that mixture. So, yeast and bacteria are living organisms. They feed on the flour and produce, as a byproduct, gas and lactic acid. So this is what is flavoring your sourdough. It is what is raising the dough, creating those air bubbles that you see inside of bread. And then with sourdough, as the name implies, the lactic acid gives it that kind of sour tanginess. The yeast and bacteria in your starter are feeding on the flours, and eventually they will run out of the food source. Now, I keep my starter in the fridge so that it kind of slows down the metabolism of the yeast and bacteria, but eventually it needs to be fed. So on the schedule that I have it, it's about once a week. Now, the process of feeding, because I'm not a bakery and I'm producing bread in like very, very small quantities, I actually have to pour off some of the starter and get rid of it. And that is so that I don't keep like multiplying the volume of starter every time I feed it, and then I have more than I can use. So it naturally leads to the question, well, like, what do I do with my discard? I don't want to get rid of it. It's good flour. You know, I feed high quality flour to my starter. Plus it has all these sour flavors in it. We should do something with it. And a very, very natural way of using it is in pancakes. And I'm going to start by feeding the starter so that I get my discard. To me, for a reasonable amount of starter to maintain in the fridge, I use 25 grams of starter. I'm going to feed it with 100 grams each water and flour. So I'm going to weigh out 25 grams. So this is actually a ripe starter. It's a little bit past ripe. I fed it last night. And you can see it has this kind of stretchy consistency, like that. Okay, now the rest of this is our discard. So I'm only feeding this amount to get roughly an equal volume of starter, but a refreshed starter that can sit in the fridge, and there's plenty of food for the yeast and bacteria, not creating a lot of competition. I need a cup of starter discard, which should be about what I have here. And the texture of your starter will be different depending on how long it's been sitting. Is it room temperature? Is it cold? The starter was actually a little bit on the cool side. To feed the starter, the first thing you want to do is add your water. And I'm going to dissolve the starter in the water, and then it makes it easier to incorporate the flour. So I like to use cool water because I don't want to jumpstart the yeast and bacteria. I just want it to kind of go like low and slow. So I'm going to add 100 grams of water. That's 1 part starter to 4 parts water, so 100 grams water. And go ahead and stir that. Okay, now flour. I'll sometimes add a little bit of whole wheat flour or some rye flour. These are things that are giving like the yeast and bacteria like really love, and it's going to make them very, very active. But just to maintain my starter at like a sort of a steady baseline, I'm just going to add bread flour, which is a white flour. So I'm going to add 100 grams. So then just give this a stir. And I don't have to stir this beyond the point of just getting all of the flour hydrated. It's going to look like a paste basically. And then as it continues to sit in the refrigerator, and even at sort of a low level of activity, the yeast and bacteria will start to feed on the flour. The texture thins out quite a bit and can almost become liquid if you let it sit for a long time. So that's all you need to do. Make sure it's evenly mixed, but that's as far as you need to go. And then as far as maintaining a starter, I keep it in a quart container like this. When you put the lid on, it allows the starter to expand, so there's like gas production and you'll get a buildup of pressure if you have a really tight sealing lid. So I like a plastic container because it has some give and there won't be any like exploding, bursting starter. I have a timer on my phone that goes off at like 9:30 p.m. on Sunday nights, so I remember to feed it. But truthfully, I neglect it a lot and I don't always feed it. And it can become really kind of thin and stringy and even develops kind of a clear liquid on top, which is called hooch, which is basically alcohol, a byproduct of the kind of starving yeast and bacteria that are in there. But that's okay. Like, it's not ideal, but your starter is very resilient and can be brought back from that point and returned to a healthy state just from feeding and leaving it at room temperature and feeding it a few times. This goes into the fridge, and then I have the rest of my discard, and we're gonna make our pancakes with that. The first step, I'm gonna mix my dry ingredients, all-purpose flour, whole wheat flour. So of baking soda, I'm gonna do a 1/2 teaspoon. Of powder, 1 1/4 teaspoons, and a teaspoon of kosher salt. I'm using Diamond Crystal kosher salt. If you have Morton kosher, use a 1/2 teaspoon, not a full teaspoon. Okay, whisk that together. Now I'm going to separate my eggs. I have 2 large eggs. By the way, everything is room temp. Everything just mixes better that way. These we're going to beat the whites and make them really foamy and light. Make sure that the bowl is really clean. You don't want any fat residue. Pro tip, don't use plastic when you're trying to whip egg whites because plastic can retain like a sort of almost imperceptible like residue from fat, and egg whites won't whip very effectively. So use metal or glass. Look at this orange yolk. I will say that having chickens, when I do buy eggs, I will only buy like, because now I love chickens, I'll only buy like very expensive, fancy eggs. Now eggs, oh God, are a little harder to separate when they're room temp, so if you have the forethought, it's not that important. You can separate them while they're cold, and then let the yolks and whites come to room temp separately. So I'm gonna add the milk. The cornmeal, because I hydrated, is now kind of a wet ingredient, so I'm gonna add that. Oh no, my container's too small because I have to add the starter. I'm gonna put in the melted butter. This is butter that I melted in the microwave and then just let it come to room temp. And I wanna add my starter, but this is too small. I'll add it in the bowl. Set this aside, and I'm not gonna mix until I have my egg whites beaten. I'm gonna add an additional little pinch of salt. You could use a hand mixer for this if you wanted to. Okay, so once you have your egg whites at this stage, it's where they've gone from kind of like yellow and translucent to more opaque, white, and foamy. I can start to add my sugar. Now I'm gonna add my sugar with one hand and whisk with the other. If your bowl is moving around, you can always make like a little ring with your dish towel, so it keeps it from moving around. Then you have a hand free. So I like to sprinkle in the sugar really gradually. The sugar helps to stabilize the egg whites. So obviously when we're making pancakes, like the batter is gonna sit as I make them one at a time. And this just helps to add a little bit of stability so it doesn't deflate as quickly. Now the point of beating the egg whites and adding them in separately is that it's just another way of incorporating air. So I have the leavening from the baking powder and the baking soda, which is chemical leavening, and that the sort of puffing action is initiated by the moisture and the heat from the griddle. And egg whites is just another form of leavening. It's just working air in to the mixture itself. If I were to dump all the sugar in at once, it would still whip, but I would get like a finer foam and it wouldn't have as much volume. So gradually adding the sugar. It just helps to achieve maximum volume in the egg whites. If I were doing more than 2 egg whites, I'd probably use my mixer, but 2 is manageable. Now, typically, there's like the upside down bowl test where you know you've hit medium, firm peaks when you can turn the bowl upside down and they don't fall out.
Can you try it real quick?
It's liquid. Doing it yet. Harder than it looks. Let me see. You don't want to overdo it?
Yeah, I don't want
No, that's you're good.
Look at that. There's a peak.
That's a good peak.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I'm gonna add all the wet into the middle of the bowl. And make sure to scrape in all that cornmeal. And then, of course, my starter. I'm about to cook these right away. So it's not like the egg whites. Really what the starter is doing is it's adding flavor. So it is a fermented mixture. It's tangy. That is what I'm getting out of the starter. Not really, it's not like producing any bubbles in the batter itself. I'm just gonna start with a little whisking motion in the center of the bowl to try to incorporate. Now I don't want to overmix. All right, and I'm done. Better to undermix than overmix, especially since we're about to fold in the egg whites. Grab a spatula. Just gonna scrape down the sides. Now, I'm gonna fold in the egg whites in 2 batches. So I'll scrape in about half. Folding is this method of gentle mixing, and it's often used to incorporate something airy like egg whites. And it's sort of like turning the mixture onto itself, so kind of scraping from the bottom of the bowl and then rotating and mixing it so that it's on top. And then I'm going to add the rest, and this is going to make them super fluffy. I have to admit, I've not always been a pancake lover, but I do think the best pancakes are homemade pancakes. And I think if eaten in the right quantity at the right time, they're pretty great.
What about diner pancakes?
I have a harder time with diner pancakes. I don't know. They tend to be kind of, sometimes they're, I don't know, it's just hit or miss. It's like I don't always know if it's going to be a good pancake or not. And when a bad pancake is really bad. So I do like a homemade pancake. Harris makes pancakes somewhat often, and they're always so good. And a big part of making a great pancake is the griddling. I like a really crispy edge. Some might even call it burned. Now, a preheated griddle is really important. I want the pancakes to go on there hot. I like the flavor of butter, but I like the higher smoke point of oil, so I do a mix. This is room temp, just makes it easier. And a little bit of oil. I mean, I really like to basically fry the pancakes. My batter looks super light, so I feel like my pan I could have let it preheat a little more. I kind of want it to sizzle as it goes on there. Once you put it in the pan and the batter starts to set a little bit, and you start getting some bursting bubbles, that's where you can put in your blueberries, your chopped up nuts, you know. Chocolate chips. People do, I guess, like banana slices or whatever. The like classic sign of a pancake that's ready to flip is bubbles that pop in the center of the pancake and stay open. Don't close back up from liquid batter. With pancakes, it's kind of like 80-20. 80% first side, 20% second side. I don't know why I'm so bad at flipping stuff.
Aim to the right.
There we go. Nice color. I mean, what I really want is like that edge, and I can feel that it's crispy. I think I need more fat. I'm going to keep it on medium because it will continue to, you know, build heat in the skillet. I've never flipped a pancake under more pressure.
Aim to the left.
Aim to the left? I can't. It's like Zoolander. I can only flip right. I can only flip right. Well, that's a good one. That's the level of doneness. That too. Some people might think that was too dumb. I think that's perfect. I love diners. I just don't want to. I don't know. The diner pancake is like such a gamble.
I think the pancake is what separates a diner from being good or bad.
Interesting.
Thank you.
It's not interesting, it's just true.
It's true.
I guess the thing is like, I prefer an egg breakfast and not a sweet breakfast, but I like a little bite of a sweet thing. So I like a table pancake. Pancake for the table. 2 bites. You're great.
Family style.
Yeah, shared, yeah. So I can have my omelet, you know, and then I can have my like breakfast dessert. Another sign besides the bubbles is like shiny to matte. And I think this has to be really well set for me to flip it all in one piece. So I just turn it down so I can let it go a little longer. It's not good. It's not good for my anxiety.
Look at Julia while you do it.
No, I have
Don't
to
even
look. I have to look at the pancake.
Don't even look at
Oh God. Okay. Ready? Oh God, I'm so nervous. Ooh. Ooh. Cut to that part, but that was pretty good. Well, it's fine. One really great thing about using starter and baked goods, it tends to add like nice flexibility and also kind of like holding power so things don't dry out as easily, which is great for pancakes if you're making them in batches and you can hold them. So I'm gonna add a little bit of butter. I highly recommend that you store your maple syrup in a squeeze bottle. So great for pancakes, among other things. In the fridge, of course, once it's open, it has a tendency to grow a little mold, so keep it in the fridge. Ah, stay. Maple is so sweet, and so I really just want enough to like add a little bit of sweetness, but not too much. I want the crispy edge. I'm gonna go in like this. Okay, question, when you guys eat a stack, do you cut through the whole stack or do you eat the top one off?
I cut half of it and then cut it into pieces and then syrup that portion.
The
it
bottom part.
doesn't- Yeah.
I also
Well,
put
no, the whole half.
I put a pat of butter between each one.
Yes, that one. That's the way.
Wow,
Then I eat them one at a time.
wow. So many like little proprietary moves. I love the cornmeal flavor and the texture. And I like that it's not so crunchy, so I kind of let it hydrate in that milk. I love how the starter makes it almost like a little savory. And look at the texture. You can see that it's full of those little air bubbles. It has a really nice fluffiness. I like when something that's a treat also feels like there's something wholesome about it, but not virtuous at the same time. And I feel like these pancakes do that because it has the whole wheat flour, it has the starter, which has other whole wheat flours in it, it has the cornmeal. So there's texture and flavor, crispy edge, fluffy interior, and it just needs like the littlest bit of maple syrup to sweeten it, and it's delicious. And I think that it accomplishes what I think a lot of pancakes do not do, which is like, it doesn't make me feel like I need a nap after I eat a couple. I think the main thing we accomplished today is making a delicious pancake. But of course, there's utility here as well because we used up our sourdough discard. And you can get really creative with ways to use sourdough discard, but I think the best place for you to start with your sourdough discard is making pancakes. So this is one that I really love. Make sure you fry it really well, get that crispy edge, super delicious, and I think you can feel good about not wasting your starter, and you can feel good about eating these too. So thank you for watching. It's so great to be back with more Dessert Person episodes, and stay tuned for the next episode.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. I forgot. But it's so long I forgot to say that.